Hey guys, it's Lando from the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host today. You can get me on Twitter at LandoFF. We are on socials at Snap_Fantasy. If you have specific questions about Lamar Jackson, about Antonio Brown, Michael Thomas, Zeke Elliott, slide into our DMs and we could help you through some really tough decisions. You can send us pictures of your team, your opponent's team, who your trading partner is, and we could kind of figure out and help you through some decisions on what makes sense for your team based on your needs and your opponents and how to get the most out of your trades. Before I continue, make sure to like and subscribe to the video. It makes the world of a difference. Comment below if you're buying Lamar Jackson, if you're selling Lamar Jackson, and what you are doing, because he is the topic of this video today. Lamar Jackson was the first or second quarterback off the board, and he has been a disappointment. Last year, he lit the world on fire and was the NFL MVP, but probably also your fantasy MVP because you got him in the late rounds. You got him in the 10th, 11th round. This year, you had to pay up for him because he was projected to be that quarterback plus running back. The quarterback that ran for 1,000 yards and passed for 30 touchdowns. And so far, it hasn't been great. It hasn't been that elite level production that you expected, that you needed from that early round pick. He's done his bye week now, but the schedule is getting tough. He's got Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, New England, Tennessee, Pittsburgh again, but then the fantasy playoffs really open up. So keep in mind that if you can make it to the fantasy playoffs with Lamar Jackson, then you have Dallas, Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the New York Giants in week 16 for the championship match. So that is where we have to decide if we're trading for Lamar Jackson, what really are we giving up and what do we want? Can we withstand this really tough schedule ahead? Is this going to be a league-winning decision? Or if you have Lamar and you spent high draft capital on him and you're losing your matchups because you're missing out on that running back or wide receiver you had, what kind of value can you get from him? And that would put you in a good spot. So this is what I'm going to go through today and figure out what we should do with Lamar Jackson. If you haven't already, follow us on socials, Snap_Fantasy. Lamar Jackson, his deep ball pass percentage has plummeted, and that's impacted guys like Hollywood Brown. And really the offense. They're not scoring as much points as an offense. Their defense is elite and their defense is great, so they don't necessarily have to score that much. That's having a massive impact on everyone, including Lamar, even the running backs. Like you can't start. Mark Ingram is banged up. J.K. Dobbins has been a disappointment. We thought he was going to be even better than a DeAndre Swift. That has not panned out that much. And then you have a guy like Gus Edwards who's getting a lot of work and equal rush attempts than the other two running backs. Everyone in Baltimore is pretty much disappointed except for Mark Andrews. Even him is a touchdown-dependent tight end just like anyone else because the volume in Baltimore is not there because they don't have to pass that much. His career high this year is 30, or his season high this year is 37 pass attempts, but that was against Cincinnati, and he only put up 18.5 fantasy points for your team. He's currently quarterback 16. My first recommendation is generally to buy low on quarterbacks. I'm not generally someone that buys the best quarterback, buys a Russell Wilson right now, buys a Kyler Murray right now, because a guy like Justin Herbert or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, someone you drafted late, could always have a top 10 week, have a top 5 week. Justin Herbert is lighting the world on fire. I saw a Dynasty poll go up. Who would you rather have in Dynasty Startup right now? Lamar Jackson or Justin Herbert? Comment below on which one you prefer. And it wasn't 100% Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's only 23 years old. Justin Herbert's lighting the world on fire. We live in a fantasy world of recency bias. So right now it's going to be tough. If he disappoints against Pittsburgh, there's an even better chance for you to buy low for Lamar Jackson because I do believe his floor and upside is still high. Is he going to put up those consistent 40-point games, 50-point even in fantasy? No, because he doesn't look like the same quarterback, but I do think he can bounce back. He had a knee injury early in the offseason, and that limited his rush attempts. His season high rush attempts was 16 against Houston, but before that, it's been all been under 10. So last year, we saw multiple games with massive rush attempts. He had multiple with 14, 16, 17 rush attempts against Cleveland in week 16 last week, 19 against Cincinnati the year before, but we're just not seeing that kind of upside. So can he do that over again? Sure, of course he can, but is he going to be the same quarterback he was last year? No. So what you want to trade for Lamar Jackson. So looking at the quarterbacks this year, obviously the top one, depending on your formats, is either Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson. I would, if you want to trade for Lamar, you need to pay up and maybe have to go with a Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers plus. And that kind of risk involved to get a name brand like Lamar Jackson might be difficult. I think I'd feel more safe going lower with a guy like Joe Burrow. I would feel more safe getting with a Baker Mayfield plus. Like, you're gonna have to pay more than just one quarterback. A fair 1-for-1 isn't going to work for a guy like Lamar. I don't think the owners are willing to just trade him straight up for another quarterback. So getting a Derek Carr to and then plus a running back, like maybe they'll accept Devin Singletary, a Malcolm Brown, Latavius Murray if they're an Alvin Kamara owner, Gio Bernard if they're a Mixon owner, something like that. Leonard Fournette maybe might get the deal done. Maybe they want a J.K. Dobbins in the deal, and I would consider doing a low-end quarterback and a low-end running back for Lamar Jackson, especially if you have really good depth on your team. And that's why I want to see your team to see if it makes sense. Because if you don't have the depth to trade for Lamar, don't do it. Because there's a world where he is not the same guy. He's putting up very average numbers, and he finishes around the top 12 quarterback, 15 quarterback on the year, and he's a massive disappointment. If you subscribe to our channel, we love the late round quarterback. We love getting the Justin Herberts off the waiver wire, the Joe Burrows of the world. Those are the players that we're going to draft more often than not. Ryan Tannehill, Jared Goff, Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Brees, Matt Stafford. Those guys are more often than not on your team. You're not locked into starting your quarterback every week regardless of the matchup. And that's the key. Lamar Jackson so far this year is not a matchup-proof quarterback. I had a question this week about whether I would start Justin Herbert against Denver or Lamar Jackson against Pittsburgh. That is a difficult question to answer because Justin Herbert has been lighting the world on fire. He put up 44 fantasy points this past week. Lamar Jackson hasn't touched that this year. This year, maybe it's a bold take. I'm just going to start Justin Herbert this week against Denver over Lamar Jackson against Pittsburgh. I think the floor is similar between the two, and the upside is similar between the two based on what we've seen this year. So maybe that's a bold take, but you have to roll with the punches. You got to stay water, guys. You can't just have take lock and think that Lamar Jackson is the number one quarterback in fantasy when a rookie has come in and performed really well. So if I'm selling Lamar Jackson, which I would consider doing, I want to get value. This is why the trades make sense for both, because if I drafted Lamar early, I'm lost for depth. So I'm looking at a replaceable quarterback. And the key thing is here, guys, is to get a quarterback that's done his bye week as well. If it turns out he's an every week starter, then you can just start him every week. Getting a Matt Stafford plus might be a good deal. He's done his bye. He's got some good matchups against Minnesota, Washington, Carolina, Houston coming up after a tough one against Indianapolis. So you can start Matt Stafford with a decent amount of confidence. Not a ton. You don't want to start him this week against Indianapolis if you can help it. But that kind of deal is something that would help you out, and you don't have to waste your waiver priority on a quarterback after trading for a quarterback plus and trading away Lamar Jackson. So make sure you slide into our DMs and send us a picture so we know exactly the depth you have and if it makes sense for your team. Other players I would want in the deal if I'm trading away Lamar. I mean, if you could do a 1-for-1 and you have a quarterback on your depth and getting even a banged up Joe Mixon, getting a Josh Jacobs, getting an underperforming Jonathan Taylor. Maybe if you own Chase Edmonds and you want Kenyon Drake, get Drake on your team. If you already have a Herbert on your team, for example, or Joe Burrow on your team, or Teddy Bridgewater as well, maybe you want these guys that are banged up right now. You don't need them right away, but they have upside and will give you more depth. Usually trading a quarterback for a positional player really does help, and it makes sense for the most part because a quarterback is very much a streaming option. Some wide receivers I would want to acquire. I mean, there's lots of them. A Robert Woods, even a Mike Evans that's underperforming. Keenan Allen, T. Higgins, Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, all these guys I would trade straight up for Lamar Jackson right now because having that positional advantage helps. Harder to find a wide receiver 1 on the waiver wire than it is a quarterback 1. Thanks a lot, guys. Make sure to check out our other videos. We have one on Michael Thomas. We've got one on Antonio Brown. We've got one on Zeke Elliott. We keep producing tons of content, so keep tuned to the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, and we will see you next time.